Everyone, and welcome to another exciting adventure at the Hub World. Today's quest will have us covering all of the games that have been announced during the summertime. My name is Jules, and today our party members are
Matteo
and Gino.
Whether you're joining our adventure from YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, or Spotify, be sure to like and subscribe. Now let's get this adventure rolling with some housekeeping. It's been a while since we've had, not a while since we've had an episode, but a while since we've recorded an episode. Therefore we need some housekeeping because a lot's happened.
It's been a while.
It has been a while. So, would anybody like to kick off with some stuff they've been doing?
We've been playing a lot of very similar games. We've been playing the Sonic Origins collection and Fire Emblem Warriors 3 Hopes. And Fire Emblem, first of all, has just been, it's so excellent. Like, it's the best Nintendo Musou game. And I really liked Age of Calamity and the original Hyrule Warriors. But there's just something about mixing the Fire Emblem Three Houses gameplay and like the whole like base and talking to all your characters. They did a really good job of crossing over and taking what was so fantastic about Three Houses and incorporating it with the Musou gameplay. I love being able to like direct my troops to go to places and things like that and having the support conversations. Like the original Fire Emblem Warriors left a lot to be desired in my opinion. And by just focusing on a specific game and having the direction and what worked in that game within Three Hopes, it just makes the experience so much better, like across the board.
Honestly, I only have the demo and I'm just using that right now until Mateo's finished his playthrough on his Switch. And I'm thoroughly enjoying that. And I'm surprised how much of this game they let you play for free with that demo. I'm quite shocked. I think this is a great way for Nintendo to really show off what makes their platform special.
You can definitely sink a lot of time in there and really get an idea of how the game works. Honestly, like, I think what I appreciate about it the most is that it's so consistent with Three Houses, because even though Koei Tecmo is developing, they've done a really good job of emulating Fire Emblem as a game in the Warrior style, but then also the writers of Three Houses are back and they've written this new scenario and it feels just very consistent. I like that there's not a ton of OCs, but there are a ton of new characters, and most of the new characters are characters that we heard about in Three Houses and never really met. And so, like, I don't know. It's like so far, it's fantastic. I'm really enjoying it. I think there's a lot of good twists. And I think, what's also great about it is that while it's very connected to Three Houses and while having knowledge of the events of Three Houses really enhances the experience, it's not necessary at all. Like, if you've never played Three Houses, you can jump in and you can follow the plot very easily.
Or if you're a player like me that did play Three Houses and just forgot absolutely everything because you're terrible with names, it's good.
And then Sonic Origins Collection is, great. I'm not going to speak on that one too much because right now I'm just kind of replaying games that I've played already. I've never played Sonic 3 and Knuckles, but I'm not quite there yet. But I know, Matteo, you just played Sonic CD for the first time ever.
Yeah, I did. And I really, really enjoyed Sonic CD for the most part. Like the levels it's not like a traditional Sonic game where you just want to get through it as fast as possible. Sonic CD encouraged a lot of exploration to get the 50 rings to then allow you to get the time stones. So like the worlds have past, present, and future segments, and I thought that was really creative. But I hit a roadblock right at the end of the game. I just felt that the final act of the final zone for me was difficult. New enemies got introduced, and then I had to learn how to beat Eggman at the end, like learn the patterns and stuff like that. I get that the final boss and the final level are supposed to be difficult, but it's just so inconvenient when you die and then you have to go all the way back to the beginning and then go through a really long portion, and it just grinded my gears a little bit at the end. But all in all, I still really liked Sonic CD for the most part. It's funny because like we talked and we're like, wow, to think like Metal Sonic and Amy were made before Tails.
Yeah, it's insane.
I lived my whole life thinking Sonic 2 came out before Sonic CD. But I have to say though, the animations in Sonic Origins, the new animations they made for the beginning and end of each game are phenomenal.
They're
I want
fantastic.
them to make more of those.
Make a TV show.
Yeah, make a TV show. That'd be brilliant. Those are so well done.
On top of that, Another thing that's unrelated to gaming that's happened is Kenobi's done. We all finished it. I thought it was excellent. I know that there were some reluctance around and caution around the show in the early episodes because it started off a bit slow. But I think that it just nailed it. Like it ultimately hit all the tones that I felt like it needed to. It did. It gave us everything we wanted, but not in a fan servicey way. Like I'd never felt like those moments that were meant to really like service the fans felt unnecessary or undeserved or unrewarded. It never felt like they were just there. I don't want to spoil the show, but they were sparing, they were small, but they enhanced the overall story, and I thought it was excellent. Like I still think it's the best show they put out. I know I'm probably alone on that one because everybody's Mandalorian high. But I personally don't love The Mandalorian, so Obi-Wan is like my favorite live action show they put out.
Honestly, yeah, and I have to agree with you where like the show was I feel like it was very good for the fans. Basically exactly the way that you said it, Jules. Like it was a very good show for the fans, but didn't overstuff you with fan service moments and things. Like for instance, when the dude said the thing, I got very, very, very happy instantly. And then like 20 seconds later, the dude saw the thing, and that made Matteo very, very happy. Like the same level of happy, albeit for different reasons. And I will stay vague just to like it's still kind of fresh, and
Yeah, I don't want to
it's
spoil,
we should just kind of I don't want to spoil any moments and stuff,
especially
but
because
like
it's just yeah, we're in a gaming topic today, so maybe we'll do an episode about Star Wars or Kenobi in the future. But overall, Kenobi great. If you haven't watched it and you like Star Wars, definitely watch it, especially if you like the prequels.
Yeah.
And other than that, I don't know if there's any other glaring things to talk about.
I guess really we spent a lot of our time just watching the conferences and just discussing the implications of things. Like I know like the past few days until like when we put up the Nintendo predictions podcast, we were very hesitant to do that because we
Yeah.
recorded it such a long time ago. And it's like, okay, do we post it? Is Nintendo doing something? And then we realized it was just a partner showcase, and we're like, crap. Do we still post what we recorded? And we ultimately decided that we would just to share like what we were hoping to get. And it's good that future Matteo kind of came in and just kind of like tempered expectations a bit.
And like a lot of the stuff we did predict for the direct all those weeks ago, like 3, 4 weeks ago, whenever we recorded it, that's going to be relevant whenever they do announce another Nintendo Direct, like an actual Nintendo Direct with first party announcements. So I'm sure we're going to talk more about Nintendo Directs in general today. So I think we should start from the top with Microsoft.
Yeah, we could start from Microsoft. I think the most notable thing for me from Microsoft's conference, which I think was like I know Gino, you, me, Riley, and Joe were all like, "Whoa!" Like came out of left field and was kind of exciting and completely like out of nowhere. Like something I didn't even think I'd be excited about was the fact that Riot Games and Xbox are teaming up to put Game Pass users onto League of Legends by offering them all of the champions for free, which is nuts.
Yeah, that is literal thousands of dollars worth of value right there.
Yeah, well, I don't know thousands of dollars, but definitely hundreds. And yeah, like we had a big League of Legends phase during early pandemic era where we had so much time on our hands that even playing Animal Crossing for 15 hours a day wasn't enough and we needed something else to break up the time. So we started playing League of Legends as one does when they have way too much time on their hands. But I feel like this is potentially going to bring me back to it, at least for a little bit.
Yeah.
Because then I have the freedom to really try who I want to try. Like that's what I always hated about League of Legends is like you're playing a hero, you're playing a champ, and then you see another person's champ, and you're like, oh, that's a really cool character. Now I'm going to try to grind out currency or pay real money to try and get that character, and then you might never get that character. Whereas like I feel like the experimentation will be really fun. Although I'm sure it will breed a very toxic community because they will be upset that there's a lot of newbies just trying out random players. But sucks to suck, League of Legends players.
If only I could take advantage of this, because like my Xbox Series X is more powerful than most people's computers, and you can plug a keyboard and mouse into the system, yet they don't put League of Legends on console. Like if they put it on console and I could take advantage of the Game
They
Pass
are.
perks, it's not. It's PC only.
No, they're putting League of Legends on console. It's just a different application. It's called Wild Rift.
Oh,
Is that the console
The
one,
mobile
Gino?
game. That's the mobile
Oh,
game.
the mobile one. Okay, but then there's another one that's coming to consoles. I don't know what it's called, but there is a console League of Legends that is in development. But it will not be. It's not technically the same game as the PC one.
yeah, and it probably won't be compatible with the Game Pass perks. Like they probably won't offer that.
Either way, like I don't think anybody's gonna play it on console.
Matteo can hope.
Well, not really. I'd rather not have to play League because like there's just so much to play, and I just don't want to
It's okay.
split my time another way with a game that's just literally a time suck.
Well, what we'll do is we'll go play some League of Legends. Like this will inspire us to go play League of Legends. We'll play like 2 games, realize like 5 hours has gone by, and be like, "This is too much time," and we'll hop back on Pokemon Unite.
I haven't played that in a while. I really like Pokemon Unite.
But on to more Xbox stuff. Is there anything that really caught your guys' attention?
Just in general, my thoughts of the Xbox conference were not that great. For obvious reasons, was very disappointed. But just in general, I don't like the approach Microsoft took by confining their presentation to only the next 12 months worth of releases, because a lot of stuff that they've announced years ago still isn't even a year out, which is mind-boggling to me. But everything is coming to Game Pass, obviously. But the 2 games I really wanted to talk about were High on Life, is a game made by Squanch Games, like Justin Roiland's essentially game studio that he made. Justin Roiland being the one of the co-creators of Rick and Morty. I just love the personality of that game. How like your weapons talk to you. It's hilarious. I heard High on Life was actually supposed to be a Google Stadia game, but you know how Google Stadia's gone, so they partnered up with Xbox and it's going to be on everything eventually. But that game just looks like it's going to be a blast, and I'm all in.
Oozing personality.
Literally oozing personality. And then the other game, just quickly, is The Last Case of Benedict Fox, which is sort of going to be like a Metroidvania, but it's very like Eldritch Horror y. I don't know, like it looked really cool and it's on Game Pass, so I'm gonna try it out like I did with other indie games. So I think those are the games I'm most excited for from Xbox this year. Everything else is just it is what it is. And Persona.
Yes. Well, let's be very clear. Mateo is excited about Persona 5 Royal, not the other two. I've played Persona 4 Golden
3
already.
games are big. They're big
Yes,
gets.
they are big gets. And know what? Like, I regret that I played Persona 4 Golden last year on my buddy's PSTV, which constantly kept crashing. And it was like, yeah, sometimes it would just freeze and then I would lose save data. Did it a few times at the beginning of the game and I was like, I don't know if I want to keep going. So I just pushed it through and it just didn't do it again. And I was like, okay. I beat the final boss and it did it. Like before the final cutscene. I had to go watch the final cutscene online. I was like, I'm not doing this boss again.
Oof.
But in any case, I wish I'd waited. But I'm excited about Persona 3 because I really do want to play Persona 3. I've wanted to, and I've been waiting for hopefully a remaster, so that's exciting.
Persona 3 is an expensive PSP game. Persona 4 Golden is, it's not cheap, but it's not expensive, but you have to buy a Vita. And Vita is just like,
Annoying.
Yeah.
yeah,
But
right?
it's also on Steam.
Yeah, true.
Is it coming to Game Pass Ultimate for PC? Because I would love to play Persona 4.
Yes, they're also coming to
Persona
PC.
5.
Yep,
Okay.
they're coming to PC as well. And then they're also coming to PS5, and as we found out today, also Switch.
One last thing, I actually discovered this today. Persona 5 Royal is getting a physical release on all the platforms.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
That's exciting.
but 3 and 4 are not. They're digital only. So you can buy Persona 5 Royal copy on Xbox and the Switch if you want, but the other games, unfortunately, physically those are more valuable games, yet you will not be able to buy another one physically. Like the price of a PSP copy of Persona 3 will still be crazy. So
Yeah.
they'll go down and then they'll correct, but it's not going to be as dramatic. Like collectors are unfortunately still going to have to buy the PSP version.
Anyway, Gino, did you have anything that really caught your eye during the Xbox conference?
Yes, I'm very much looking forward to the new Minecraft game, Minecraft Legends.
Ah,
So it's going to be like a third-person RTS game, in the sense where it's kind of like a lower down camera. You're following your main character, and basically it's like the creatures of the overworld. So the playable character, and like you get to team up with like zombies, skeletons, creepers, like the normal Minecraft mobs, and you're taking on the evil forces of the Nether and the Piglins. Like it's a really cool concept, and it from what we saw in some of the gameplay stuff and some of the things that Nintendo were showing off in their partner direct today, there was only like 20 seconds of like gameplay footage shown, but it kind of looked like the RTS elements of Brutal Legend, if you remember that. I think that's really really cool because like RTS is it's a really tricky genre to design for in these days. There's not a lot of like there really hasn't been like a big RTS since StarCraft 2. Hopefully that can change with the big new game by Frost Giant, but I would like to see this Minecraft game succeed and especially bring RTS games to a new audience. And like a lot of Minecraft fans are a lot younger and they may not have played an RTS game before, so it'd be really good to like bring this genre to them to find like
mm,
a new fan base. I'm really excited because I just like the idea of Minecraft in general. I've been playing that game for the past 10 years. I had a little bit of a let's play thing going with Adriano for a while, and I would love to play this game. And of course, like Starfield, Elder Scrolls.
Diablo.
But yeah, Minecraft is like the big thing I'm super excited for.
Well, before we move away from Microsoft, I did actually want to touch on one of the games that you just mentioned there. I want to touch on Starfield. I think I've mentioned it multiple times because Starfield's come up in multiple topics over the course of our podcast. And I've very much, I feel, expressed how indifferent I am to the idea of Starfield. Just because I'm just like, meh, space, Elder Scrolls, like it is what it is. But I was still interested in seeing them really show it off. And somehow they made me so disinterested in the game by what they showed off. Like when they first showed it off, like when it first opened, I was like, okay, this looks interesting. Like I can get on board with this. It's like Elder Scrolls, but in space. I like space. I can do it. But the second that they said, like, I think they said like 6,000 explorable planets, I was just like, ugh.
They said 1,000.
Either way, that put such a bad taste in my mouth. What it basically implies is when you have that amount of explorable planets, it basically tells you that what's going to be on those planets. Pre-generated, boring, like barren world, like they're not developing, like they're going for quantity over quality. Like I would rather them have like a dozen planets that are all super developed. They create the cultures of those planets. They have their own species and races, and they're like interesting, rather than them throw a number like 1,000 at me. Because when you throw a number like that at me, I know for a fact there's no way you put heart into all 1,000 of those. Like you're just throwing a number out there, and that really made me sick because I don't like open world games that have just like way too much explorable space that have no intention behind them.
I will challenge you on one thing though, and maybe this might make you reconsider, Jules. From what we've heard from like different developer, like either interviews or talks or like that people have had. I'm not sure if this came right from Todd Howard or just like people working on the game. But one of the big inspirations for what Starfield is kind of like they want to go for that kind of like NASA Explorer kind of field, right? And if you think about it, there's 1,000 planets in this game. I would hope that there's at least a handful of them that are desolate and barren and have nothing on them because newsflash, that's what's actually out there in the real universe, right? And if they're going for that
Yeah,
more like realistic kind of approach or like a grounded approach, yes, okay, there's gonna be like space pirates and robots and stuff running around, and like I'm assuming there's also gonna be a bunch of alien species. But if they're going for that more grounded space approach, walking around a barren planet like you would have done in Mass Effect 1 is a lot more acceptable than what we actually got, just say for Mass Effect 1, which was this big open world, kind of beautiful kind of adventure game, right? They're completely different. So I can be more forgiving of like, okay, go to Desolate Planet 52 and collect 30 pieces of rock. Because like that's what the majority of the actual planets out there are. 1,000 is way too many, but it gives you some variety when you're collecting those rocks.
I guess so. And like from a purely like realism point, like I get your point. It's just like I have grown tired of open world games in general, mostly because of their scale and because I get bored of them and I'm like I don't want to explore everything. And so when they threw a number like that out at me, I was just like that's just too big. I know there's no possible way that they intentionally created each of these 1000 planets to be interesting, and so, regardless of what their reasoning is, that means part of like a big portion of the game is just gonna be boring and barren. And that
Yeah.
I'm just telling you, like that's just what I'm saying. It's for Starfield for me. That really put a bad taste in my mouth to the point where I'm just like, I can't manage another open world game that's gonna be that big. And I remember talking to Riley about it too after, and he kind of said the same thing. He's just like, that's just too much. It's just like rather something like Mass Effect where there's like 6 explorable planets, but they put heart into the planets than to have something like Starfield where they're like, look how many we have, and it's like, okay, that's great. This doesn't feel like ambition anymore. This just feels like they just want it to be big.
As long as it's not taking away resources and core development time, I don't really care. It's just like a big number. As long as people don't get too hung up on that idea. Like I feel like this game is still going to be okay.
I'm sure it'll still be an exceptional game. Okay, well, does anybody have any other last things to say about Xbox, or do we want to move kind of forward?
I'm down to move on. I could care less about Starfield.
Well, then let's move into like general like summer games. So I don't know if the only game I want to mention from like that summer games little presentation was just a little like small indie game called The Plucky Squire. Like I don't know why, but like I saw the trailer and I was like, whoa, this looks awesome. It's a Devolver game. It's almost like a Zelda kind of game, but you play it on like the canvas of like a book, but then he can jump out and then it becomes like a 3D adventure and it looks really, really cute and really cool. So I'm excited about that. And I also forgot to mention with the Xbox One, sorry, while we're on the topic of indie games, that Hollow Knight Silk Song is coming out within the next 12 months, which is very hype.
Very hype
Mhm.
indeed.
Really weird that that was at Xbox, but I guess Nintendo also had stuff that was shown at Xbox, so like they kind of stole each other's thunder.
Yeah, well, actually, like speaking to that, not to double back to Persona, but Joe and I were actually talking about this. And we are fairly certain that based off of how the Persona collection was announced today in Nintendo's Direct versus how it was brought into Xbox, me and Joe think that Nintendo was supposed to be announcing this collection. Like when E3 got canceled and they pushed back their Direct and they changed it. That's the thing is Atlas has their own Persona event going on, like their own anniversary event that's been going on the last year, and they have the like general times of all the Persona announcements already pre-announced. And so I think when Nintendo did that, Atlas was like, "Well, sorry, like you guys can't be the first ones to announce it then." And then Microsoft just threw it into theirs cuz they like kind of like when they talked about Persona in Microsoft's, it almost felt like it was like an afterthought. They were just kind of like, "Oh, by the way, we really like our Japanese partners. Here's Persona." Versus like, Nintendo's was like it was the end of their thing. Like it was supposed to be like this big announcement and like they had like this pre-created like Morgana and Teddy talking about the games. Like it seemed like more of a big deal in the way they presented it. And I can't
Mhm.
envision that Nintendo, if they had known that it had already been announced by that point, would have had that.
I feel like Nintendo fans also just care more in general because they're more similar to the Sony fans than actual Xbox fans. If
That
that
is
makes
also
any sense.
true. But yeah, and then I guess there was also the State of Play, where a few games were announced, notable games. Street Fighter 6, I know Yako is very excited about.
Does it still have the ugly logo?
No, they changed the logo.
Oh, they changed ugly logo. Okay.
Then Resident Evil 4 Remake, which is coming out very soon. It comes out in March, and it looks very exceptional. Like it's one of the, if not the best horror game of all time. So that's like a big deal.
There's a lot of pressure on them to nail that remake because I know Resident Evil 3 remake kind of like I'm not no Resident Evil fan, but just listening to what the community and a lot of people had to say about that game, like 2 was exceptional. People loved that game. It was nominated for Game of the Year and things like that. But 3 kind of just came and went. And Capcom essentially cannot afford Resident Evil 4 remake to end up the way that 3 did because 4 is still considered to be the best game in the series, and it's one of the best,
Yeah.
like you said, one of the best horror games ever made.
Well, the thing is, 4 will end up like that, no matter what. Like, no matter what, I can tell you right now, 4 will be divisive. And that's because they've been very clear about this. They've said this since they started remaking them. Like, we're reimagining them, we're not remaking them. Like, we're modernizing the controls and we're
Yeah.
altering the story and modernizing the story. And with 2, people liked it because like 2 is super outdated, and like the changes felt like, oh well, they changed this to make the story more like modern because the story and the storytelling was outdated because it's from PS1. But then when you get to Resident Evil 3, people were a bit more pissed off that there were so many changes, and they're like, I don't like this is distasteful, and that's only going to be worse with 4. It's like with the Final Fantasy 7 remake deal, right? Like, it's like when you have a game that's held up to be this holy grail, even if there's like minor changes.
They'll nitpick everything.
Yeah, and ultimately, like, I am confident that Resident Evil 4 remake will be a better game than Resident Evil 4. But will the community agree? Probably not. Because Resident Evil 3, like, honestly, Resident Evil 3 remake objectively is way better than Resident Evil 3, and it's really good. The only reason it's not as great as Resident Evil 2 is because Resident Evil 3 isn't as good as Resident Evil 2. So, of course, remaking Resident Evil 3 means that
Yeah,
the
if the
game
foundation isn't as good.
Yeah, like, exactly, right? Like, you can only do so much.
Speaking of remake,
Well, before we get to remake, we will segue. We're getting close.
Yeah.
We have one more segue because there was one other game announced in the state of play, which is Final Fantasy 16. And Final Fantasy 16 looks incredible. It is so different from any Final Fantasy game that's ever come before. It is not a straight up RPG. It is like an action game. I'm speaking off my coat right now. Like, I'm just like, I don't know if this is correct, but I remember reading something like this. The person who was in charge of designing the combat for Final Fantasy 16, I believe, is one of the designers for Devil May Cry. Like, the combat is action. The combat is not RPG. It is action with a bit of RPG elements, but like even more so than we've seen in things like Kingdom Hearts and Final Fantasy VII Remake. Like, this is like action at its core, to the point where, like, even though there's a party, you can't play as anybody but the main character.
ooh,
You can play as the summons. The summons are playing heavily into the story. And in my opinion, the best thing that they announced was that the game is not open world, which a lot of people are very upset about. And I love what the director said. Not every game needs to be open world, because the reality is open world is good for game design, but open world is limiting when it comes to telling a narrative. And if we want to tell a narrative, a fixed narrative that we are very passionate about, we can't give the players the agency to go wherever they want, whenever they want, because it doesn't make sense in the context of the narrative. So instead, you'll be plopped into areas similar to like Assassin's Creed 2 is kind of how he almost like described it, where like the story will take place at different times in different areas, and you'll be able to explore that area, but you're never going to have the option to be able to explore the whole world. You're going to be plopped into like, okay, you're in this, for this part of the game, you're in this nation, and you can explore that nation for that part of the game, but once you move on, you're gone. You're done exploring it, and you're exploring somewhere else. And I think that's better. I'm actually very excited about the game because it sounds like they're doing what they want. They have a vision, they are executing that vision, and it will be something very different than what we've experienced, and I'm happy for that.
I feel like we almost need like a renaissance of like non-open world games.
Yeah, we do.
Like, yes, we understand Breath of the Wild was great, but you can't make everything Breath of the Wild. Not everything works in that. I would love to be wrong about Sonic, but I don't know. I don't know why I brought Sonic into this. That's one thing we haven't talked about yet. Like, we got a little bit more for Sonic.
But we talked about Sonic in our housekeeping for last episode.
But like, yeah, not everything needs to be open world. I feel like they shouldn't have to justify it, but the world we live in makes them like need to justify it.
Well, unfortunately, we live in this time of gaming where I feel like we really have gotten to a point where games are evolving beyond what they used to be. And unfortunately, we still live in a time where there's a lot of gatekeeping, and there's a lot of people who grew up with certain games that were certain styles or certain ways, and they feel like they should always be that way. And Final Fantasy has had that curse for a long time. Like, people have written off Final Fantasy for like its last 5 games just because Square's just like, we don't want to tell these stories in turn-based action anymore, because ultimately, and like they've gone on record saying this, and I fully agree. They say like the core of Final Fantasy was never turn-based RPG, it was storytelling. Narrative was the core of Final Fantasy. And when you were in the SNES era or even the PS1 era, like, what made the most sense for narrative storytelling was turn-based RPGs, because that's what was available, and that was what we could make. Like, these big worlds, we were limited to that because there wasn't a lot of open world games in the way that we know them now, and there wasn't a lot of opportunities to explore narrative unless you had a text heavy game with RPG elements. It was different, whereas now we live in a time where you can tell these narratives in different ways, and in fact turn-based RPGs kind of slow down the narrative and kind of limit the narrative now. And so, with technology evolving and gameplay evolving, the old style of Final Fantasy just doesn't serve the intention of Final Fantasy, which is to tell a narrative that's enhanced by its gameplay. And if Final Fantasy is going to be really grand and action heavy and like exhilarating, it's going to suck if that exhilaration is stopped by you going into a turn-based fight that takes you half an hour to beat. Like, that's ultimately what they're kind of talking about, is like, the excitement you feel playing the game should match what's happening in the story. And turn-based just doesn't suit that anymore. And I personally agree. And I know a lot of people don't. Speaking of Final Fantasy fans who get mad about everything, let's move into the other divisive Final Fantasy games. Final Fantasy VII Anniversary is this year. They had a presentation and they killed it. They announced 2 games. They announced a full remaster of Crisis Core,
Yes.
which is super hype. And it honestly, I've never seen a remaster like this. Like, they completely, like, from the ground up rebuilt all the environments, all the models. Like, it looks exceptional. This is like the finest line of like remake remaster, in my opinion.
I have no horse in this race. Like, I do not care about Final Fantasy at all. Like, but I do respect Final Fantasy, and I do respect Final Fantasy VII and the whole world. How like there's essentially one game within a series became its own series, and I just
Yeah.
love that. And there's very few games that have that ability to spin off from a series and become its own thing. Like, I personally think Ocarina of Time could have been that for Nintendo, but regardless of that, I think that this Final Fantasy VII anniversary event was probably the best event out of any of the ones we're talking about. Crisis Core looks, and I know the significance of Crisis Core, and I'm like, that is an awesome thing to do for that game. And then the whole
Yeah.
thing with the other announcements about Final Fantasy VII remake and its sequels, that's another thing. I'm like, awesome. I watched Gino play Final Fantasy VII remake. I demoed it at PAX. I had fun playing it, and I enjoyed that experience because it's more entry level. I don't like JRPGs very much. And going back to what you said about Final Fantasy 16, like that's more inviting for a novice like me. That type of
Yeah.
gameplay is way more entry level and way more forgiving in a way for people that just don't like traditional JRPGs. So that's why I actually might try Crisis Core. I might try 7 Remake. Like, I might actually play that myself now.
I can't wait to get back into Crisis Core because I remember playing that game on PSP. It was my first taste of like a JRPG that outside of, let's just say, I'm gonna say Pokemon, and I know that that might cause some like grief or cringe in some of our viewers and stuff because like it's one of those things where like I only had like Pokemon and stuff. I had PSP, which introduced me to all these like wonderful new non-Nintendo IPs, and when playing through Crisis Core, I remember just as a kid going through everything and being like, "Why is Cloud here?" And then then I realized, oh wait a minute, that's the Buster story. This is Final Fantasy VII. Oh, okay. Wait, what? There's a whole universe inside of Final Fantasy VII. What would make this 8? No, that can't be because 13's out. And it was just kind of confusing. Like that was my gateway into Final Fantasy proper. And being able to go back to that game, seeing all those environments, reliving the story, and just seeing all these wonderful characters like Ngil, seeing Zach Fair in there, and like how their worlds are all intermingled. It's going to be great. And it's also a really good tie into the next part of the Final Fantasy VII remake series,
Yeah.
was a Rebirth.
Yeah, Rebirth.
And at the end of Final Fantasy VII Remake, spoiler alert, Zach Fair is around. That's not supposed to happen. And by bringing him back in a significant way by retelling his story is a great way to get fans invested again.
It never even occurred to me after the ending of Remake that Crisis Core was the most obvious thing to do next. Like, I didn't even think about that. Like, it never occurred to me. And it made so much sense once the rumbling started to happen that it might get announced, and it did. I was like, this all makes a lot of sense. Even like at the beginning of the year when they announced the Final Fantasy VII remake, or sorry, Final Fantasy VII anniversary event, and they showed off the logo. The logo was Cloud, Zack, and Sephiroth. They had put it in front of us all along, and nobody really put the pieces together. And it's so exciting. And it also begs the question of, because the only things they're really changing is, of course, they're doing a bit of quality of life, and they've redone like all of the visuals, but they've also redone the voice cast. All the voice acting is now the new voice cast, which to me implies that this version of Crisis Core is taking place within the universe of Remake, which makes me wonder if the ending is going to be different.
It would be really cool if they had both, like a classic ending and then they have like this other ending as well.
Yeah. Speaking to Rebirth, it's also very exciting to see how quickly, like, I think this is a quick turnaround. I think 4 years is way shorter than I thought, because I was thinking Square Enix time, and Square Enix time tends to be long. So I'm very excited that it's coming out next year. I'm very excited that they're only doing 3 games, because I think my worry was that they were going to try and go for 4 or 5, and then this was just going to take forever. So 3 sounds great. And like, they've already started work on the third game. So the third game's probably going to have a quicker turnaround than the second game did. So realistically, like, we'll probably have had the whole saga released within 7 years of each other. I know a lot of people are upset because they are worried about the amount of changes that might happen. To those people, I say go play the original game if you're so concerned. And I'm super excited. I'm excited whether they change nothing, whether they do some small changes, or whether they go crazy and change everything. Like, I'm on board for it. I'm on board for the ride. Like, I really like what they're doing. And I'm just in general very excited to see if they bring in more of the Crisis Core cast into like the main series. But with that, I don't want to get too spoilery. So I think I'm just going to leave it with, we will explore Final Fantasy VII remake theories in another episode. And then the last thing, of course, that last kind of announcement thing that happened this month was today, the third-party Nintendo Direct Mini, and there were quite a number of unexpected things in there.
Just before we get into it, like the whole like the diehard Nintendo community was pretty deflated going into today, which resulted in me going into this direct with absolutely zero expectations. And I have to say, coming out of the direct, I think third party wise, this is the one of the most solid showings Nintendo's ever had in a direct. And if you would have thrown in a few more third party announcements and whatever usual first party stuff we would have expected from Nintendo, this could have been one of the best Nintendo Directs. But because obviously there's no first party stuff and it was only 25 minutes, but it was still really, really, really good. I'm shocked by how many games that were announced in this that I actually really want to play.
I didn't watch the whole thing because I was getting ready for work this morning, but I kind of like zipped through it here and there. I honestly wasn't expecting to see them just dropping like, oh yeah, by the way, there's a demo for Monster Hunter. Try it out. I've never been interested in Monster Hunter outside of maybe like Monster Hunter World for a little bit. I might give that a go, give the series a chance.
Nier Automata got announced. That is a pretty big announcement. That's a game a lot of people have wanted on Switch, and it's coming, I think, in October, which is relatively soon. And then there was obviously the Persona stuff. There was
Mario and Rabbids.
Yeah, and Mario and Rabbids got a release date of October 20th, and tomorrow Ubisoft is doing their own sort of presentation of the game and 3 DLC. I don't know if expansions is the right word, but the Donkey Kong DLC and Mario and Rabbids was phenomenal. Are we going to get 3 of those?
I doubt it.
Yeah, right. Because it'll probably be 2 small things and then 1 big expansion at the end.
Or 3 of the same size, right? Like they're adding more characters in
Yeah.
it, which is interesting.
I just love the whole like Mario Galaxy vibe that the game has. Like instead of getting
Yeah.
coins for defeating enemies, you get star bits.
Yeah.
That's so cool.
And I like that Bowser's playable. That's really exciting.
hmm
We know all the characters at this point.
Unless Rosalina is a playable character, because like there's Rabid Rosalina.
I might be wrong. I have to check, but I'm pretty sure they said that there's 9 playable characters. And right now we know Mario, Luigi, Peach, Bowser, and then we know Rabid Luigi, Rabid Peach, Rabid Rosalina, and then that other Rabid, the goth
Yeah.
one. Maybe there's
Mhm.
one more.
So they cut Yoshi.
Yeah, I think Yoshi's cut
Yoshi
altogether.
and Rabbit, Yoshi and Rabbit Yoshi looks like they were cut.
And I think Rabid Mario's cut, unless Rabid Mario was there.
I honestly don't remember, but like my main team was just Mario, Peach, and regular Luigi I used. So
It's like very different. So I'm curious to see how it ends up working out.
I think they played it very safe in the first game because they didn't know how people would receive just the crossover in general, but now they're going all in, and I'm down for that. The original is so good. It's one of my favorite games on Switch, and the Donkey Kong DLC is just even better in my opinion. But huge fan, 2 thumbs up for Mario and Rabbids. And I think the 2 biggest games though that we're probably going to spend time talking about, at least for me, I'll talk about the one I really am looking forward to is the Mega Man Battle Network collection. I'm not a Mega Man fan, but I love the Battle Network games. I believe I played the original on PSP. I know it didn't come out on PSP, but we played Game Boy Advance games on PSP. And I never beat it, but I really enjoyed it. I own Battle Network 2 and Battle Network 3 Blue, I believe it's 3 Blue on Game Boy Advance. There were 6 games that released on Game Boy Advance, which is insane because the Game Boy Advance really was only Nintendo's flagship handheld for 3 years. And they released 6 games, and 1 and 2 are standalone in terms of there's only one version of each of those games. But Battle Network 3, 4, 5, and 6 both have 2 versions, and all the versions of the games are in the collection. So there's 10 games total. But as excited as I am for these games, they're not currently announced to come out on Xbox. They've been announced for Switch, PC, and PlayStation 5, but there's no word of anything for Xbox yet. And to be honest with you, if it doesn't come out on Xbox, I don't know if I have the motivation to buy and play it elsewhere.
Mateo's very achievement oriented.
Well, it's not achievements. It's also like Microsoft rewards and things like that. And just the Xbox is my platform of choice. And regardless, though, like it's like with the Persona 3 and Persona 4 Golden, like a lot of these Battle Network games are very expensive, especially the first one. Like, good luck finding a cartridge. I think a cartridge of that game is like pushing $200. So just the fact that these games are playable elsewhere is a godsend, and I'm happy that people that would want to play these games and give them a chance are able to because they're not like regular Mega Man games. It's an RPG, and then the combat is a tactics game essentially. I just love the mix of gameplay. And also, like, I was a big fan of the TV show when the TV show was out too. So, just everything about Battle Network, like that's my favorite Mega Man, and it just came out of nowhere. No one was expecting this.
It was a very surprising announcement. In fact, that whole segment there was a very surprising announcement because it opened with Super Bomberman R2, which was very cool, and I was like, "Oh, I was really excited." And then they showed off the Battle Network, so I was like, "Oh, that's a big surprise." And then they showed off Pac-Man World Repack, which I'm super excited about. I love anything 3D platformers. I believe I've played Pac-Man World on PS1 when I was a kid, but like never enough to remember it.
It's supposed to be pretty good.
I know, that's why I'm super excited, because like Klonoa is also coming out in a week, so like there's a lot of 3D platformers that are getting remade that I'm really excited about.
It's coming out in August, I believe.
And then the other game that was shown off that I thought was really cool was Blank.
Mm-hmm.
It was that like little narrative adventure game with the deer or the fawn and the wolf cub.
I got some serious Ori vibes from that trailer. The game looks really good.
One of them's gonna die.
I got that feeling too. There was no Bayonetta. Is that game going to get delayed? They didn't show it here, but in general though, we saw Mario and Rabbids. It's coming out this year. We've talked about this separately in other discussions we've had in person and whatever. That yes, it's disappointing that Nintendo didn't show what they're personally working on, but in a way they don't really need to because they have so many games coming out this year. Fire Emblem just came out. We have Xenoblade, Mario and Rabbids, Splatoon 3, Pokemon. Advance Wars is probably coming out this year. Bayonetta 3 is potentially coming out this year. Almost every month coming up, there is something to play. And there's rumors of another game coming out in November. I don't want to spoil what it is, just in case people don't want to hear it. We're still going to have hope that there is going to be another, like a regular Nintendo Direct, maybe in August or September, hopefully even in July. Like maybe they do it earlier. But there will be news of new games coming out this year. And Nintendo just can sit back and let the third-party games speak for themselves, and the games that they already announced that are coming out this year speak for themselves. Like Crisis Core is coming out on Switch this year too. Like Crisis Core is coming out on all platforms.
Is it a cloud version or an actual, like, honest to goodness
Actual version?
I feel like I would want that on Switch almost, just to like kind of like have those like that nostalgia moment of playing that game on portable.
Don't get it on Switch, Gino.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. It's gonna run like ass.
It ran badly on PSP too, so
Sonic Frontiers is coming to Switch. Like I'm not gonna buy it on Switch. If I buy it, I'll buy it on Xbox. But like Nintendo's showing of Sonic Frontiers was more exciting than anywhere that game was shown in the last month. I don't know why Sega chose to hold back until now to show off the Cyber Zone or whatever the heck they call it. That's really cool. But just there's a lot of stuff coming to Switch this year, and we're just going to have to be patient to see what Nintendo has in store.
The other thing, too, I meant to mention at the beginning, I don't even know if you know this, Matteo, because I know you didn't wake up for the Direct this morning, but me and Joe were talking about it. This Direct was the first Direct, I think, ever that wasn't live streamed.
Yeah, they just dropped it.
Which was great, because then it let me skip through the things I didn't want to watch.
Yeah, well, that's what I did too. I skipped the entire beginning with Monster Hunter. Like, I was like, whoa, they spent like 4 minutes on Monster Hunter. Okay, I don't need to watch this. No offense, people that like Monster Hunter.
I feel like that's also better for like Nintendo's analytics and stuff too, because like we can actually see, at least in our analytics, where people are watching the videos and everything until, right? And we can see how many people stick around to the very end and like what's exciting, what people are skipping to and all that stuff. Releasing the whole video all at once is way better for their optics and analytics to see what people are actually interested in.
And then just lastly, like Nintendo actually they did a Treehouse segment for Live Alive. So at least the Treehouse is doing something. Like they had like a nice sort of sitting area set up where they demoed the game like how we normally see it. So part of me thinks they make this big setup for Live Alive. Maybe they'll do something in a couple weeks where they'll reuse that and show off their own games. I'm just going to be very optimistic with what Nintendo does, because I really think at any point they could, if they wanted to, they could show something and be successful doing that. At the same time, like if you would have talked to me before this partner showcase, I would have been my outlook would have been very different. But I am very, very pleasantly surprised with how well this Direct impressed me. So that's all I have to say about the Nintendo Direct Mini Partner Showcase.
That's a lot of syllables.
Does anyone else have anything to add, or any other games we're forgetting about that were announced?
I think that's it. Gino, take us away.
That brings us to the end of today's quest. If you liked what you heard today, hit that like, subscribe, and follow button below. If you want to contribute to the conversation, let us know any ideas you have for upcoming quests, or just share your ideas, leave us a comment, we do read them all. Anyway, that's everything from us here at the Hub World. Matteo?
Microsoft, make a new Banjo game. See you, everybody.